We're just going to interrupt at that to bring you this post that Donald Trump has put on Truth Social. As you can see, he says there, the United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolás Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. The post goes on. This operation was done in conjunction with US law enforcement. Details to follow. He says there will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Donald J. Trump. So let's bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins. So, David, a significant development.
Yes, highly significant. This has gone further than we were anticipating. The president now confirming that his government has not just carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela, but has captured its leader, the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro, and his wife, who Donald Trump says have now been flown out of the country. That is indeed an escalation in the dispute between the United States and Venezuela. The president says there will be a news conference at 11 a.m. It's just 4:25 in the morning here in Washington, so that is still some time away. But at least we do now have some confirmation from the President of the United States in relation to what we've been witnessing in the early hours of the morning in Venezuela, where there were 7 explosions in quick succession and low-flying aircraft. There were some reports of ground activity. That was something people were sceptical about, but you would assume there will have had to be some kind of ground activity if they have indeed captured the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife. Now, the fact that they have been flown out of Venezuela as well will raise questions about what exactly is going on right now. Has there been some kind of crisis diplomacy going on in the background? Has a back channel been opened between the White House and Caracas? Because at one stage, President Trump was said to have offered Maduro a safe passage out of Venezuela if he was prepared to stand down. So I think it is possible, just possible at this stage, that Donald Trump has achieved his aim of bringing about regime change in Venezuela. This may have been a negotiated exit for Maduro, and the activity that we've been witnessing overnight may to some extent have been a bit of a distraction in terms of what's going on the ground in terms of the president seeking to remove Maduro from office. But there will no doubt be significant geopolitical blowback, given that nations like Russia, China, Iran had all previously expressed solidarity with the Venezuelan leader.
Well, yes, and if this were not some kind of negotiated exit, what are the implications, do you think, legally? Where would the US stand carrying out strikes and capturing the leader and removing him, as far as international law is concerned, do we know?
Well, Anna, President Trump and his government have always sought to justify this both politically and legally on the basis that they were protecting US citizens from drug traffickers. That's why they've bombed 35 boats in recent months in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, claiming more than 100 lives. On each occasion, they provided little to no evidence. On one occasion, in fact, they carried out a second strike on a vessel that had already been incapacitated while there were survivors in the water. That raised all sorts of questions about breaches of international law, but the Department of Defense, or Department of War as it styles itself now in Washington, ploughed on regardless. And that while that was happening at the same time, we had this enormous military and naval buildup off the coast of Venezuela. 7 warships, including the USS Gerald Ford, the world's largest warship, a nuclear submarine, F-35 jets, all of it pointing to the inevitability, it seemed, of strikes on Venezuela, which now have taken place overnight. Now, there were reports of low-flying aircraft, and we can see them in some of the video that's come in overnight from Venezuela. It's not clear if these were airstrikes, though, because it's important to note that there are at least 2 guided guided missile cruisers off the coast of Venezuela. So the US government does have the capability to launch Tomahawk cruise missiles on the land, and that may indeed be what has happened overnight.
So it's going to be a really important few hours. And I guess we still don't know whether the action that has now been confirmed by President Trump is over.
No, he has not given any indication of that at this stage. He has a number of choices, as we've been discussing over the last couple of hours. He will, of course, have to at least attempt to politically and legally justify this. He could expand that military and naval deployment in the region, although many would feel any kind of ground invasion would be highly problematic and risk US casualties as well as significant geopolitical blowback for the President of the United States. Or, as we've been discussing, there could be further back-channel negotiations, perhaps to see the leader of the opposition, Maria Machado, the woman who won the Nobel Prize recently, installed as president, or someone else installed as president, as successor to Maduro. But President Trump has always alleged that Nicolás Maduro was leading a drugs cartel. He was a dictator and should be removed. That's been the allegation from the outset. He talked about that during his first term. In fact, President Joe Biden doubled down on that. But according to the latest statement from the President of the United States, Maduro is no longer in Venezuela.